just want to say a huge thank you, first and foremost, to Corbin and Hannah from Boly Welch for being here and doing this presentation, and then to all the students who have tuned in this early in the morning or taken a break from all the other things that are going on to listen in. Feel free, if you all have questions, to put them in the chat, and I will do my best to get questions out there. We can also, Corbin and Hannah, if you know that there are some good places in the presentation to pause for questions, that would be awesome. But I would just love if we could start by Corbin and Hannah doing some introductions and then go ahead and get started.
Yeah, for sure. So my name's Corbin. I work at Boly Welch. I've been there since 2013, so quite a while now. When I started, I actually took over the job that Hannah had been working in as the a coordinator to our admin recruiters, and I was in that job for a while, and then made up a new job for myself about 1.5 years ago, where I do a lot of different things, but a big part of my job is sort of connecting with job seekers who our recruiters maybe aren't able to help, and part of that is doing this workshop series. I went to McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, so you know, I kind of know the small liberal arts college world. And I know that it's tricky to enter the working world. Of course, right now, I mean, there's, you know, I didn't enter into a pandemic, nor has anybody before, so there's a lot of ambiguity there that I can't speak to. But, you know, I want to be able to try to help, like, address, like, how to transition what you've picked up and what you've learned in your liberal arts environment translate it into something that people in a working world that maybe don't come from that will understand, because a lot is often lost in translation between, you know, how you communicate within a liberal arts college and how the rest of the world communicates. Yeah, and I'll pass this on to Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah. I have been at Boly Welch for 7.5 years or so. I started in 2012. I've had lots of jobs at Boly Welch also. Started at the front desk, moved into a coordinator role, spent a long time in our contract temporary division, placing people in short and long-term positions. And for the past year have been recruiting within our HR division, so strictly on positions that fall within the HR field. I also graduated from a small liberal arts school, University of Puget Sound in Tacoma. Did not graduate during a pandemic, but did graduate during a recession. So do understand a little bit of that kind of crazy job market that you guys are entering into, and sort of that uncertainty around what's next after graduation if you are all seniors. Not sure if you are. Yeah, and I stepped in to help Corbin with these kind of 101 webinars. Abby, who usually does this with us, is on maternity leave, so I'm happy to be participating. And I told Corbin, I have bagels that are in the oven, and I'm going to go run and take them out really fast, and then I'll be back.
Okay, well, while she's doing that, we can go ahead and get started. Our presentation here, these are all dogs from our office that you'll get to know. This is Teddy here, the star. He'll pop up throughout. So, you know, we like to kind of always start out these presentations with addressing what is the reality of the job search, and you know, with the internet, the problem is that it's too easy to apply to jobs. You can sit there on Indeed or on Craigslist and shoot out your resume to 100 applications in a couple hours, and so can everybody else. And so hiring officials and companies are just inundated with resumes all the time, and it's a huge pain, and it's hard for them to sort through it and to, you know, figure out what to do with it. So often they will just ignore the resumes that they receive. And so when you're sitting there and all you're doing is sending resumes out to job postings online, you're not going to necessarily yield much, because it's really like the odds that anyone even looks at your resume, much less like reads it and then decides to interview you, are really, really low. So we really recommend anything that you can do to kind of circumnavigate that is worth doing. And LinkedIn is a great resource, and it's really a good place to start, and a great thing to rely on in your job search throughout, because it's the only, realistically, it's the only professional social network, and people in the working world, in the like white collar world, use it all the time. They love LinkedIn. And I'm hoping people can see my presentation here. but I'll try to cover the information that's on it if they can't. So a lot of people are on LinkedIn. 150 million people in the U.S., which is like a significant portion of the country. 75% of people who recently changed jobs use LinkedIn to help them. It is definitely an active part of the job search for a lot of people. It provides a lot of different things, along with just, being a place to have your personal professional profile. Companies have profiles on there, and then they have jobs that they post on there. And then there are, kind of community resources. There are groups that you can join. There are pages you can follow. There are a lot of different things, and they're all kind of based around jobs. But the vast majority of people that are on LinkedIn don't really actually do anything with it. Most people don't ever post on LinkedIn. If you go on your LinkedIn account, you'll probably see the same handful of people showing up a lot, which means doing anything on LinkedIn can really have a lot of payoff. If you post occasionally, if you engage with content, people will notice. Your name will show up more frequently. You will appear more prominently. And so that can make a really big impact in whether or not like anyone actually sees your account. And because it is the like professional space, if you present on there as somebody who knows what they're talking about in your field, then you might look legitimate when you aren't actually necessarily like legitimate by anyone else's standards. But it's like, oh, you're maybe a thought leader, whatever that means. You seem to have these good ideas about this topic, and you're engaging with people who are also talking about it.
And the stat that talks about 45% of people earning over 75K are on LinkedIn, that's really just to highlight that people who are more likely to be in maybe leadership, management positions that are going to be making hiring decisions, those people are on LinkedIn. Therefore, you also want to be on LinkedIn so they can find you.
Yeah, and recruiters are definitely on LinkedIn. If you're a recruiter, if you're looking for a candidate for a job, which is a recruiter's entire job, and so they do it to pay their rent, LinkedIn is the easiest place to find people. Nothing else really lets you search the way that LinkedIn does, because a recruiter can go in and say like, I'm looking for an accounts payable person. I'm going to go into the LinkedIn search and type in like, find me people who have the title accounts payable in the Portland area, who are looking for work, who, have had this title for this number of years, and they can get that list of people. So if you have of course, as a grad right now, that kind of thing won't necessarily be relevant because you don't have that experience, but you just want to get everything going already and have some momentum on your account, so that as you have experience that comes into it, and as like your career moves along, you can kind of like grow your account with it. Definitely want to put a picture on there. That's we always recommend not putting photos on resumes because it's not necessary, but on a LinkedIn profile, no picture, it looks like you didn't finish your profile. Looks like an inactive account. And make sure to do like a nice looking picture. Don't do like a group photo or a car selfie. Just a photo in front of a blank wall is fine. We see a lot of really awful photos on LinkedIn. You would just like, and on resumes. I don't know, people make strange choices sometimes, but just something like basic and professional is good. Something that doesn't look too intimidating. And anything on this slide?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay, so yeah, professional photo, dress for the job you want. Don't be wearing a t-shirt unless it's a really cool t-shirt and you're trying to work at like a graphic design agency or something.
Don't be wearing like your wedding dress or like a formal, picture that you had done and then you've cropped the other person out of it. We've seen all kinds of things when it comes to pictures. You really just want it to look like you, but be professional, be simple, pretty much.
Can you talk for a moment because I have to go grab the door real quick. So sorry.
Okay. There's also the option to have a picture as sort of the header banner on your LinkedIn profile. And I think you can show a little bit of personality here, but you don't want it to detract necessarily from the rest of your profile. I think a lot of times, like I have a picture of downtown Portland, that's where our office is. Some people just maybe have some sort of graphic pattern on their background. Abby will show you an example of her LinkedIn profile, and she has like a hand-drawn map of Portland. So I think it should be something that is kind of minimalist or relevant to where you live or relevant to what you're actually doing. But it's kind of a place to add a little bit of fun there. And then another thing that's really important is giving yourself a header that make sense, basically. It's the words that people are going to find you by often. So example that we have here, marketing coordinator. Instead of saying like PR guru and marketing ninja or something, you know, very unique, that people are not necessarily going to search for, you want it to be the title that people are going to be searching for when it's those types of jobs that you're looking for. So if I'm looking to be a marketing coordinator, that's what I want my title to be, because that's how people are going to find me.
Yeah, and you can even say something like aspiring, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
show that like this is the direction you're getting in. Maybe you're not quite there yet, you know, aspiring marketing professional. Like, all right, I get the idea across. I know what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and sometimes people even will say marketing professional looking for a new opportunity, because sometimes recruiters will actually use that language of like looking or searching to add when they're searching for candidates, especially like when I worked in our contract division, I was always looking for people who weren't currently working, who would be open to take on contract and temporary roles. And so I would often use those sorts of search terms to hopefully kind of narrow it down for people who were actively looking for something new.
So here's Abby's profile, who you know would ordinarily be your host in this workshop, and she has a nicely filled out profile. You see, she has a good professional looking photo up there with her smiling face. She has a picture that's her cover photo, which is a nice thing to where you can have something a little bit, you know, jazzy and interesting. She has this cute you know, hand drawn map of downtown Portland. And then her profile here, this is very different from what you would write on a resume. It's much more of a narrative. It's you know, it's really kind of telling her story. This would be cheesy and not really appropriate on a resume. But LinkedIn it is still, you know, as much as it's a professional site, it's still social media. So it's about Abby. It's about who she is, and it's about the person that she is. So you know, she can kind of describe her story. So this is a good place to you know, you can do the same kind of thing. Like, you don't have to be real stuffy here. You can sort of talk about like who you are and what, you know, what have your like, you know, interests and passions been in education, in your education, and like, how do you want to apply that? What are you excited to be doing next? What drives you? What motivates you? Any of that kind of thing to just sort of frame like, what sort of professional person is this going to be? You know, give yourself a little story. And this is a great length to have, you know, a couple of short paragraphs. And then of course you'll see that she's got her like current employer and, you know, her school filled in and all that. And then a title that's pretty clear, like what her deal is. You know, Abby could call herself lots of different things. She has you know, a very ambiguous job, but she went with something that kind of gets, you know, HR consultant. That covers a lot of stuff. So again, you can be conversational here. And we got.
Yeah, I mean, I think the profile is, you know, really that chance to sort of use the first person narrative that you wouldn't use in your resume. Sort of this highlight that this slide has on kind of what should make up your summary, I think is actually really important. I think people kind of skip over this part and maybe just write a like 2-sentence thing. But I think all of these pieces are really good to have in there. Your why. Why are you in the line of work that you're in? Why did you pursue the degree that you pursued? Kind of what is your, you know, reason for being in this professional network a little bit. You can talk about your current situation. So for me, it would be where I work and what I do at Boly Welch. For you, it might be highlighting your accomplishments in your education or any other sort of, you know, job opportunities you've had, and what you're looking for. So for me, I would actually talk about, you know, I'm here to find candidates, to talk with clients, to network within the HR space. For you, that might be really different. You're going to be looking to build your network, to be making, you know, connections that can lead you to your, you know, career goal of XYZ. And then the last piece of when to connect. So sometimes you might share your email, sometimes you might share whatever platform you prefer people to connect with you on. Abby kind of gives a really quick, if you want to go back one slide, Corbin, Abby gives at this very last line, she gives a really easy way for people to understand why they should be reaching out to her and how and when. So I think it gives people that permission to connect with you.
it also gives context that if she reaches out to somebody and they look at her profile, they can kind of figure out like, well, who is this person? You know, if you're excited about pursuing a career in logistics and systems, and you put in here that you're looking to connect with professionals in the supply chain world, then when you reach out to someone and they look at you, they're like, okay, this all lines up. I get a comprehensive picture of who this person is. And don't copy paste from your resume in general on your LinkedIn. It really should be a separate thing. There's a good chance at some point that someone's going to be looking at your LinkedIn right next to your resume, and if it's just all the exact same content, what's the point? So you can phrase things differently, you can approach it differently. You don't need to include all the exact same information because it's not everything that's on your resume isn't necessarily all relevant to the same audience that your LinkedIn is facing. So here, we're still looking at Abby's. This is not at all how her resume would be. Again, she's using the first person. It's kind of more narrative. So it describes like what she was doing there rather than just listing like duties and which a resume shouldn't just list duties. It should be more than that anyway. But it's just resumes are something that are probably being viewed pretty quickly and are pretty formulaic for a reason, because they need to be able to be consumed easily by both a person and a computer. Whereas a LinkedIn, again, is something that if someone's reading your LinkedIn, they're giving it more attention than glancing at your resume. So you have like that more flexibility to express yourself through how you're putting out the information than the limitations in a resume. You can see there's a couple of things here. There's you can add links to your experience section. So like she's got these are URLs just to the websites, but you can also add a document attachment. So if you want to highlight a major project that you did in school and you had some end result PowerPoint presentation or a PDF or a graphic or whatever, you can attach that directly to your LinkedIn profile, so you can use it as a portfolio. And I wouldn't rely, like if you're a graphic design person, this shouldn't be your whole portfolio, but it's just a good way to highlight, like here are like a couple, like one or two things that are like I'm most proud of, that are most relevant, that I want to make sure people can see. And then comparing this is what the resume content would look like. So you see, it's really just completely different. How you approach it versus this. The resume content comes in when necessary, but this is just kind of like it's more about spin. It's more you're marketing yourself. You're kind of just you're telling a story. There's a skills section on LinkedIn where you can put in the specific technical skills that you have. Use it for every skill that you have. And a skill that you have, in my opinion, is a skill that you are confident enough to talk the talk in an interview, and you can make it happen through YouTube videos on bathroom breaks in the job. You can maybe you're not an expert on Photoshop, but like you've used it a decent amount of times, and like you can figure stuff out pretty good. Like stick it on there. They'll assess you if you need to. But recruiters do search by the skills that are in there. So if they have an employer that's looking for XYZ skills, the first thing they do might be just type in those skills, so they don't even have to look at people who don't have those.
And there was a time when it was very popular for people to get like endorsed for skills on LinkedIn. I don't really see it, Corbin, maybe you have insight. I don't really see that being like a thing anymore. When I first joined LinkedIn, it was like people were endorsing me for like these crazy skills that like I wouldn't want to highlight on my LinkedIn. But just remember that you can control what skills are present there. You can like arrange them. And I don't think you need to worry about people endorsing those or you endorsing those skills. That doesn't seem to be a thing anymore.
Yeah, the endorsements definitely aren't a thing. I have all my endorsements are from like 2012, and they're all about newspaper writing. That's not crucial.
Yeah.
But really add whatever kind of background you have. If you have any kind of certifications, if you have any kind of licensing or anything, which you probably don't right now, but if maybe you got something out of the ordinary, any kind of volunteer experience, there are sections to fill all that in. And whereas with like a resume, it's definitely taboo to have a really long resume. I don't think people really care if your LinkedIn is long. It's like it's a website, so you scroll and it's fine. So include things that you want to celebrate, that you want to highlight, that you think are in any way relevant. And definitely customize your LinkedIn URL. The default URL will have like, Hannah-Bergerson AE7QGLP, and it looks ugly and it's big and clunky. But you can just customize it to be whatever you want, and it will look much better on your resume when you're typing in your LinkedIn URL. It just looks more like consistent and professional.
And I think one thing just to mention around the volunteer experiences, there is a section on LinkedIn where you can just kind of have a brief overview of your experience. If you had a more involved position that was a volunteer role, like Abby, for example, has her associate board member position, that's a volunteer position, but it's doing things that are going to be more similar to the actual work that she's going to be doing as well in her professional life. So if you did have a volunteer position that was really utilizing the skills that you're hoping to bring to your next job, I think it's fine to include that in the more traditional kind of work section. So it's highlighted a bit more and you can expand on what you really were doing for that volunteer position.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, same with your resume. Work is work. It doesn't matter if it was paid. If you were doing work in a volunteer capacity, that's really relevant. That you, especially if it was like not just like a one-time thing or like real short term, but if it was like you put the work into it, feel free to include that on the same level as any kind of paid labor. So this is what some of the back end of LinkedIn, like this is when a recruiter is coming into LinkedIn, this is the kind of thing that they are seeing. So, you can see there's a really like comprehensive breakdown that they can dial in exactly what they're looking for. And so this is where like you want to have the right information in there, because like recruiters are going to be lazy and they're going to like go for the lowest hanging fruit. So you see like, so these numbers up here, this is a search that Abby did, searching for like executive assistant or something like that. And so there's 170,000 people showed up in her search. That's a lot. No one's going to search through 170,000 people. 66,000 are listed as more likely to respond. That's kind of just their formula algorithm thing. That's it might be a combination of like activity on the website, engagement with people who are connected, engagement with like a company that the recruiter is affiliated with. So like that's like definitely going to go from boil down to that one. And then there's this 27,000 that are open to new opportunities. That's a setting that you can put into your profile that says like, I'm open to new opportunities. I'm open to hearing from recruiters. They're definitely going to reach from those people first. And so, it's still a lot of people, 27,000 to 170,000, but you want to be in that 27,000 because no one's searching these first two if this last one has any options. And then these past applicants, those are ones that have already, applied to this company. So those are the easy ones to look at, glance at first to see if they're any worth. But from these narrowed down groups, they can really dial in exactly the kind of information that they need. So the more that you put in there that they can then search by, if anyone is ever looking for something that you might be, you want to come up in that search. You have anything on this, Hannah?
Not really. I mean, and I think just highlighting that past applicants thing, those are people who have applied to that company through a posting maybe they did on LinkedIn. And those are going to be a great pool of people to look into because they had initial interest in the company regardless. And we'll talk a little bit about applying for jobs on LinkedIn, but yeah, I mean, this is a really helpful tool for recruiters to use to just sort of help them narrow down. And so this just again goes to highlight you really want a complete profile so that you can be sure that you're popping up in searches that are going to align with what your background is.
And also it takes you have plenty of time. If you don't already have a complete LinkedIn profile, you have no excuse not to do it right now. Even as we're all stuck in our homes right now. So when you got your profile, completed, you have all your information on there, connect with everybody that you know. Just everyone that like connect with your family members, connect with your friends, connect with every professor, connect with like the people who work in the office who you're homies with, connect with your high school teachers, connect with anyone just to like get some numbers up of people that you're, so that you have a bit more going on in your profile. And then it'll start recommending people to you as the connections, it'll do the whole social media web thing. So it'll kind of guide you in the right direction. It's always good to, include an actual, if it's someone that you know well, like of course it doesn't matter, just hit add. But if it's someone that maybe you aren't as close with, or that you've met once and that you remembered, but you're not, best friends with. It's good to add a personalized message. The little default LinkedIn message is kind of awkward. It's like, hi, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. So it's good to put some context for like, hey, like, we met at this event, a couple weeks ago, or I saw you speak at this thing. I was really interested in like your perspective on this. Would love to connect with you, whatever. Just some kind of something. You can follow things. So follow, Reed College, follow any companies that you're interested in. Again, it'll just sort of like fill out your profile. It'll make it'll put things on your feed. It'll sort of show like who you are, because these things will show up on your profile. So like I'm following like McAllister, and it's visible on there that I'm like, liking their page or whatever. 100 plus connections is a good place to start. It just kind of looks like you have done stuff on your profile. Once you hit 500, it will just say 500 plus. So once you get to that point, then like you could have 1 million connections. It doesn't matter. So you'll get to that point, and then you can just kind of like, don't worry about it. Anything from you, Hannah, on this one?
Yeah, and then I think going back to adding a note as to why you're connecting with somebody, especially if they're, barely an acquaintance or somebody that you saw speak or met at a networking event or something. In addition to just giving them some context as to who you are, the really nice thing is that it kind of starts a chat history with that person. So maybe it's 6 months down the road and you see something they post and you want to reach out to them. Maybe it's a job opportunity. If you send them a message, they're going to see that first message that you sent them of like, hey, I met you at this specific networking event. It was great to talk with you about XYZ. They now have that sort of recall to go back to and be like, oh yeah, I remember this person. So I think it's, again, just reiterating, it's a really good idea to send some sort of note, giving some context as to why you're connecting. And then just in terms of kind of who you're connecting with, after you kind of get that baseline, like I'm connected with all my friends, my schoolmates, my family, things like that, making connections that make sense for kind of what you want to be doing, because this is what's going to start filling up your feed. And those people's connections are going to start filling up your feed too with content. And so if you have it a bit more tailored, you're hopefully going to be seeing things that are actually going to be interesting to you and are going to be in the industry you want to be in, and just make the whole LinkedIn experience a little bit more relevant to, what you want to get out of it.
Yeah, and LinkedIn is generally more amenable than like say Facebook to connecting with people who you don't already know. It's pretty normal in the professional world to connect people who you don't personally know, as long as you are presenting a valid reason for doing so. So, if you see someone who's maybe they're doing a job that like you just think is really cool, and you really are super interested in what they're doing. Yeah, that's a totally valid reason to connect with them. You can send them a message, and the connection says like, hey, I'm graduating from Reed. I see that you're working as a da-da-da. That seems really cool. Would just love to connect with you, maybe learn more about, how you got there, what your job is like. Most people are happy to talk about themselves, so they're probably going to accept. And then like Hannah said, it's really helpful to have that little bit of context in the initial thing, because I never remember who anybody is. So when someone messages me on LinkedIn, I have to go back and like look at it's like, where did this start? Like, how did we start talking to each other? And when it says like, oh, like I came to your workshop today and whatever, then I know exactly what the context is, and it kind of helps me with my answer.
And I think also for you guys being, in school currently, looking at just Reed alumni, and starting to connect with people who maybe are in a field that you're interested, who you have that sort of baseline connection with. I get a lot of connections from my alma mater of, people graduating and just trying to build their network and connect, kind of regardless of whether they're interested in my field necessarily, but I'm still always happy to connect with them. So I think the alumni network is another great place to start. Yeah,
definitely. That's an easy one to tap into, and there could well be people who are really like what you're interested in doing. And I don't think we had this on here, but the recruiter search thing that we were looking at, that's all in the LinkedIn backend, but you can do a lot of that same kind of searching with Boolean logic on Google. So you could run your own kind of searches where you're like, let's say you want a career in foreign relations or something. Like you could search like site LinkedIn, Reed College, administer foreign affairs or whatever, and try to find like people who have job titles that are interesting to you that went to Reed, and then on Google, and then go connect with them that way. So definitely leverage that alumni connection, soon to be alumni. Jobs are on LinkedIn. Um, Jobs on LinkedIn are a great resource because unlike Indeed, which just pulls from like a company's like applicant tracking system or from their website, and Craigslist, which is a bunch of people who are trying to kidnap you and stuff. LinkedIn is each job has to be posted individually, and each job costs money. So it's like there's no way that a job on LinkedIn isn't real. A company isn't going to keep paying LinkedIn $30 to post a job if it's not a real one. So you have a lot more like, and it's going to have the company's name on it too. So you could see marketing associate posted on Craigslist and have no idea what the company is, but here like it's Lyft, that Wild is hiring. Like it's really helpful to have that direct connection, and it'll also show you when you're looking at a job, it'll show you what kind of connections you have. So here there's like there's a U of O alum who Abby's connected to that works at Lyft. So LinkedIn will help you see the connection. So maybe someone who knows someone is at your dream company that you're not aware of yet. LinkedIn might help you make that connection. So again, that's where it's helpful to really like pull all your connections into LinkedIn so that it can use its networking brain to show you like where you might have like an in somewhere. Because when you will find that the more that you can leverage your personal network and the more that you can connect with people personally, the easier your job search will be. Relying on just computers is not very useful.
And I think one other piece that, I really love about the jobs postings on LinkedIn is there's just a ton of information all in one place for you as an applicant. Mm-hmm. Entering into the professional world, you might not know a lot of companies. You might not know what they do, might not know how big they are, much about them. And you can get a ton of information just off of LinkedIn. Like if you just clicked on the Lyft icon, it would take you to Lyft's page, and it would have an about section, and it would link their website, and it would tell you generally how many employees they have, how dispersed they are, which states. You can just learn a lot and also be able to see those connections. So I do think the jobs function of LinkedIn is really helpful.
So here's just a nice way to reach out. This was someone who had reached out to Abby. They kind of lead saying like what their interest is, why are they reaching out. They give a pretty easy request. It's totally okay to reach out to someone who you don't know, asking for something, asking because you want to talk to them, you want to know more about their career. You just want to make it an easy ask. So she suggests coffee. Abby would say like maybe don't suggest coffee because it's kind of awkward to have to turn down a coffee date with a stranger. But just make it really easy. Ask for like 10 to 15 minutes of their time. They might be like, yeah, and but of course, coffee now is not gonna happen. But they might say like, let's hop on the phone, let's do a Zoom call, I can answer your questions via email, whatever. But again, most people are happy to talk about themselves. I think honestly, right now is probably an excellent time to do like networking on LinkedIn, because I bet you have a lot of really bored professionals who are sitting around at home without much to do, and I bet they would be super stoked and very flattered if some like soon-to-be grad reached out to them and was like, hey, you seem cool, because I bet they feel pretty bad about themselves right now. So do consider it, look at people and find people to connect with and just reach out to them and show some genuine interest, show some humanity. Don't ever do form letters. Don't do templates, anything. Don't ever do templates. Every human being is different and deserves a unique written letter. It doesn't take that long. If you can't take the time to write a unique, 2-paragraph letter, you don't want to talk to them. It's not, you don't feel it's worth your time. So, give people a genuine reach out, give them the context for why. It's weird to reach out to somebody just saying like, hey, I want to connect, or like, if you don't want to make them have to ask like, why, what are you getting at? What's the point of this?
And like this, for example, if I were the person on the other end of this, my initial connection request with Abby might have just been something like, hey guys, I saw your, profile. It looks like you're doing really interesting things in Portland. I'd love to connect. The end. And then she would have accepted my request. And now I'm following up with maybe this more in-depth kind of ask of what I'm interested in talking with her about. And it's really specific. She wants to talk about the career shift. that Abby made, because she did make one from being a workers' comp attorney to a recruiter in HR. So, and so it was really specific and, you know, not asking for too much. So this isn't necessarily that first outreach to somebody, but the follow-up.
Yeah, and the initial outreach actually has a very small character limit. You can only type like 200 characters or something. So the initial outreach can never be much more than like, hey, what's up? You seem cool. Here's as much as I can tell you. Bye. Yeah, tweet length basically. Extra LinkedIn fun. You know, any kind of social media that you want to feature, any kind of portfolio website that you have, put it on there. Make sure it's up to date. It's super tacky when people list a portfolio and it hasn't been updated in 4 years. Or they put their Twitter account that they haven't tweeted in 3 years. Like, put things that are up to date, put things that are representative of like what you want to present. Also, though, assume that anyone who's going to try to hire you is probably Googling you and searching for your social media anyway. So like, at least make sure that things that are public presenting are not embarrassing. They don't have to all be like professional. You don't have to censor yourself, but just be aware that like you will be judged even for the things that you don't feature on your LinkedIn and your resume. Really do engage with what you see. It's you know, I always say like with like networking, with LinkedIn, with this Zoom call, showing up is half the battle. You know, there are many people who didn't show up to this Zoom call today, who aren't hearing whatever. Hopefully you're hearing something useful today, but they're not necessarily hearing this. And so you know, you're all getting this right now, and just by the same accord, if you go on LinkedIn and you comment and you like and you put that little bit of effort into engaging and connecting with it, you'll get something out of it. LinkedIn is no different from any other social network. They all reward engagement. You know, if you don't ever post on social media, if you don't ever comment on anything, you don't ever do anything, and then suddenly you post, maybe no one sees it. But if you're active and you maintain activity, the companies love that, and then you show up more often and they push your content more often. And so that when somebody's looking for someone like you might rise to the top because LinkedIn says like, hey, this person's super active. They're going to respond. We love them. They're always posting stuff. They're always commenting on stuff. Make sure that you know, if you are looking for work, that you turn on the thing that tells recruiters that they can look for you. That just makes it that much easier for them to find you. You know, if you see a position that you're interested in, feel free to try to connect with a recruiter. If you see like a recruiter that works at that company and you want to try to like get maybe a step ahead on a job, don't just reach out saying like, hey, I'm interested in this job, because that's like great. Or, hey, I want to apply to this job, because they'll probably tell you apply to it from the website. But reach out with a question, something clarifying, just to kind of put yourself in front of them. So you say like, hey, I'm going to apply for this job. Just wanted to ask about this one thing, or just, you know, curious about whatever, just so that they see you, they see that you're interested, they see that you're being resourceful. Your name might stand out from the crowd when they're looking through resumes later. Hannah, anything from you on here?
We'll talk a little bit more about sort of that engagement piece and how it really shows up in the next couple of slides. So I think we can move forward.
So here's a post that Abby made. You know, Abby posts occasionally on LinkedIn. She'll tell you that she's gone viral on LinkedIn a few times, and she doesn't post a ton. She just posts things that are relevant to what she does and what she's interested in. You know, she got, you know, 6,000 views on here. This is pretty like solid engagement, and you know, it's you use a little bit of hashtag, you use a little tag some people. This kind of just like nice, friendly social media engagement. Like LinkedIn loves it. People like, you know, Abby is well, what, you know, I don't know what networking looks like now, but Abby was a frequent networker. We go to events all the time, and you know, people would walk up to her and be like, "Hey, I saw your LinkedIn post. Like, I see you on LinkedIn all the time." And so just by doing this kind of thing, it would really like it expanded into her IRL networking, and she, you know, she's gotten clients. She has gotten money in her paycheck because of making a good LinkedIn post that just like pushes her name to the right person, that they then, you know, see her and reach out to her as an expert. This is from my own LinkedIn. This is when I did not take my own advice for these first few months here, and I just never really posted or engaged with my LinkedIn because I didn't feel like it. And then one day I posted like a 2-sentence little like a resume tip or something, and that went from here to here. So you can see like with like really like the most like absolute minimal effort, I got, you know, a 3-fold increase in like my profile views. You know, it's a significant jump when it's like not really anything happening to one post. So just, you know, really doing a little tiny bit will make you more visible, make you stand out more. You don't have to be posting all the time. Chime in once or twice a week with something on LinkedIn. It'll make an impact. I think right now a lot of people are on LinkedIn too. I know some of our recruiters are just hanging out on LinkedIn all day because they are bored.
It feels like appropriate because it's the professional networking site.
Exactly. And when you're so this is one that Abby posted. This was something that Abby and I were just chatting one day, and she decided to basically post what we had just been saying, and she got 16,000 views and 200 reactions. So a lot of people like reacted to this comment of "Don't put your home address on your resume." That's what I'll also say to all of you: don't put your home address on your resume. No one needs to come to your house. That's not necessary. When you look at a post, you can kind of see a breakdown of where people came from. So it gives you a little context on like what, who's looking at your profile and who's viewing you. So this is just kind of useful to see like, who am I connecting with? Who am I reaching in my posts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just so interesting just to see like, even if not that many people are liking or sharing your post, like how many views it actually gets. Mm-hmm. Because once, Corbin likes my post, that's showing up on his whole network feed now. And if somebody from his network that I'm not connected to likes, that's just showing up on this other whole network feed that I'm not even really connected to. So even just that little bit of engagement just really increases your visibility across the entire platform.
Yeah, LinkedIn does that like cross-network pollination thing a lot more than others. Like it's not often that I see on Facebook that a friend of mine has liked someone I'm not connected to's post, but on LinkedIn I see it all the time. It's always like, oh, Hannah liked this random person's thread. It's like I have no idea who this person is, but because Hannah liked it, it's showing up on my feed. So that's you'll see those views pushed real high. So again, a really like minimal effort. I think it was like it was like 0.04% engaged with LinkedIn. So it's like so many people just don't ever use their LinkedIn account. But don't be that person, because the people who do use it might be able to hire you and give you money. So I think that's the I didn't update it with Hannah's email address there. We got Abby on there, but she
It's easy. It's just Hannah@bolywelch.com. I did get one question around LinkedIn Premium, and to be honest, I actually don't know too much about LinkedIn Premium, but the question was around accessing jobs if you do not have a premium account. And I don't think that there's going to be any difference in what jobs you're able to see, regardless of if you just have the regular account or a premium account. So I would say for most people, the basic, regular, don't have to pay for anything count is going to do everything that you need it to do. And I wouldn't really see a reason for you to purchase the premium account. Corbin, do you have any opinions on that?
Sorry, I got distracted by we were having FedEx issues this morning.
Premium versus just like a regular account. The question was specifically about jobs.
There's no reason to pay for LinkedIn. That's only for recruiters. I mean, like, just don't. It's no need. There's not jobs that are only for premium users or anything like that. Yeah, I don't think there's any need for it.
Can I ask a question?
Oh.
Somebody else ask a question. Go ahead. Let the students ask a question.
Sure, anyone can ask questions.
So remote work.
Oh, sorry.
The question is any insight about finding specifically remote work? One thing that you will search, a term that you will search for is remote. A lot of times those positions will have that within the title or the description that you'll be able to search by. You can also just start to familiarize yourself with companies there are a lot of companies that have strictly remote workforces. Of course, there are always companies that may have some remote positions. They will usually be able to advertise that by kind of putting the location as sort of a broad location, or maybe they'll list multiple locations. And I think a lot of times either have the word remote or virtual as a search that you'd be able to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say that prior to like, the past month, the vast majority of companies did not do remote work at all. And I think there was this idea that remote work was much more common than it actually is. I get the inquiries all the time, people reaching out, asking for remote work and work from home. And like, we just don't ever see it. Now there's literally nothing but remote work. Like, we don't have any work that's not remote because you can't do it. So, you know, moving forward, you know, we will move out of our current position, I'm sure, although I don't know what we'll move into, but I do think that, I think that the face of remote work is going to change dramatically. And I think it will be a lot more common, post-pandemic than it was pre. So I think that a lot of the, people who have been wanting to find remote work, they couldn't find it in the past because it wasn't really out there. I think it's going to be more common. So, I mean, right now I would just assume that any job that's hiring is probably, if it's in an office, it's probably is remote at all right now.
Right. If it's not an essential business, it's probably going to be remote. But I think don't assume that there's going to be guarantees that if your preference is to work remote all the time, that will continue as people start to return to work. So if that's the case, be sure it's still like a location and everything that you feel like you can commute to and could get to if you needed to go into an office.
Yeah. Alice, your question there about recommendations. I don't know that they're super important, but I don't think there's any downside to them as long as they're relevant. Like, I turned off a recommendation that I had from somebody who I worked under for an internship 8 years ago because it's being dated. But, you know, if it's within the past couple of years, I think recommendations are nice to have on there. And I don't know that it's necessarily going to be a make it or break it for most situations, but it's always nice to see nice things being said about you by someone who seems like they know what they're talking about.
That's great, because I was thinking about, you know, how we said endorsements are kind of passe now, but a recommendation of somebody who said, hey, this person did, you know, a comic book drawing remotely for my LinkedIn, and it's, you know, 2 thumbs up, that kind of thing, or the student programmed in R for me, you know, did a great job.
Yeah, I think it's worthwhile as long as it's, you know, it's genuine and it's, you know, saying something relevant. If it's just like, they were a great worker, then like, okay, sure. But, you know, make it something that's unique and pertinent, and ideally something that sort of like highlights the skills that the student wants to highlight. You know, that's a good situation to kind of work together to see like, okay, how can we make this say that it puts me in the direction that feels right.
So right now for students, maybe something to do right now is to say, hey, reach out to a supervisor and say specifically, can you comment on my ability to, you know, X, Y, Z.
I think that would be nice. Yeah, if it's something that they are using in the job that they want to highlight that skill. If it's just like, you know, the student has, you know, did a great job of, you know, organizing this information and evaluating whatever, and, you know, something that touches specifically on a skill set that the student wants to show off.
Yeah, I think recommendations are great. Again, especially if they're timely, relevant. Like Corbin, I have jobs that in my past that I would definitely not want to be highlighted right now because it has nothing to do with what I do right now. But I think they're great. They're not going to take the place of a reference check, but I do think sometimes it can just give that hiring manager that extra little push of being like, okay, yeah, they seem like they're definitely at least worth this phone call. They have this, you know, recommendation. So I think, yeah, if you have the time to start, you know, asking for those, it's really easy to initiate on LinkedIn and ask, and you can write a personalized message asking that person and maybe even asking kind of what you are hoping they could highlight. It's super easy and seems like a great time to be doing that.
Yeah, and I think it's less awkward than asking for a recommendation, like just kind of freestanding, because you can just do it through the platform. They can just, you know, plug it right in. It shows up right on there. And it's also one of those things that I would generally discourage people from putting on their resume. That is, it's nice to have somewhere to put it. We got any other questions or? Yeah.
As a student, how do you said open to new opportunities setting is a good way for students to be highlighted to recruiters. How do you open the new opportunities setting? Open opportunities setting. You mentioned that kind of early on in right after customize your URL and open to new opportunities setting.
I'm just Googling it here because off the top of my head,
okay. I guess I could have done that.
I think it's like right on your profile. When you look at you view your own profile, there's basically just like a little toggle, I think. that you can slide to say like open to new opportunities. Once you X out of that, like for me, I know I'd X out of that. I don't know how I find it again if that changed, but Corbin just sent an update in the chat on how to do that.
Yeah, that should be the setting we're looking for there. Yeah. And LinkedIn's help section is pretty good. If you're trying to figure something out, they document their own features pretty well. They also change all the time. LinkedIn is notorious for changing, removing features. Like sometimes our recruiters will go into work in the morning and the recruiters are all in a panic because their whole platform has just totally changed overnight. So they do tweak things a lot. So don't worry if like you're confused because it's not always intuitive, but they do usually document pretty well. So you can probably find, how to do something if you're like, okay, last time I was on here, this setting was in this place, and now it just doesn't even look the same.
Hannah, can you and Corbin talk a little bit about what you're not, prognosticating the future of work, but can you talk a little bit how you all are talking about work right now and staffing and what you're thinking, if anything?
Yeah, we talk internally just a lot about kind of what we're hearing from our clients, from our candidates. There's obviously been, a lot of people that have experienced a layoff, a furlough, a reduction in their hours. Anecdotally, I feel like we do have I personally have some open positions I'm working on, and I'm not getting the same candidate flow, active flow of people applying as I would in other times. And I think that part of that is because people who are currently working might be feeling a little bit hesitant to be looking at new opportunities just because there is so much unknown. And if they're in a role that is still in existence, they might feel just a little safer staying there. They might feel more of that loyalty as well. I can kind of only speak to the HR field. The areas that I've seen sort of the most layoffs is with recruiter positions, internal recruiting positions. Those areas, training, development, recruiting, within HR, those tend to be the areas that get built up when the market is strong, and sometimes are the ones that go away when the market isn't so strong. We haven't seen much new temporary and contract roles. Most of our clients were thankfully able to transition most of their temporary employees to remote positions. And these are clients that would probably never have thought that they would ever have a temporary employee working remotely. So that's been really encouraging to be able to see people kind of maintain those positions through sort of their expected duration. Clearly, like healthcare, distribution, things like that are still going strong and hiring.
That's great. Thank you.
But yeah, I think Corbin's right. It might really change the way that companies view remote work in the future. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not in the business of predicting the future, as I think any wise person would be would avoid doing right now. But I do think we're going to see. I think whatever happens, we're going to see major changes in just sort of the structure of work, and especially in work that has capability to be done remote. I think we'll see a lot more remote work. I could see changes in the 9-to-5 kind of schedule based on all this and
what we're all experiencing.
Yeah. I mean, I know that my whole structure is all different now as we're working remote. So, I think it's worth understanding sort of how it had been in the past, but definitely be ready to help build a new reality.